Hey everyone, it's Rabbi Greg. I use he, him pronouns. And I am wondering, have you ever found yourself just like so busy with like small tasks or whatever fire, whatever kind of is sitting in front of you that you can never seem to get to the important things? It's just one thing after another, and then before you know it, the day is over and you haven't accomplished the stuff that you really wanted to accomplish. Well, that is part of the issue that we're going to be exploring today in this week's Parsha, this week's Torah portion called Yitro. Yitro is the name of Moses' father-in-law. In English, that would be Jethro. So we'll get started with a quick blessing for Torah study, and then we will jump right in. So Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Bless you, Divine One, for giving this opportunity to immerse ourselves in the exploration of Torah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the gallery view so I can see everyone, and I will share the source sheet. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see that? Excellent. Okay, so may I have a volunteer to read the English for this first sentence? And what happens before this is the Parsha starts with um, Yitro finding out about everything that happened to the Israelites, and he sent word ahead to Moses that he's coming with Moses' wife and children. And Moses then goes out and meets him, and they kind of gather in Moses' tent. Okay, so now someone wants to unmute and read, please. Yeah.
Moses then recounted to his father-in-law everything that God had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships that had befallen them on the way, and how God had delivered them.
Okay, great. So let's see. Let's just read a little bit more. Let's read like this whole vignette.
Shall I continue, or does somebody else want to jump in? Okay. Blessed be God, Jethro said, who delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh, and who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that God is greater than all gods, yes, by the result of their very schemes against the people.
Great. So, we'll start with a couple general questions, then we can dive in. So, what do you notice about the relationship between Moses and Jethro? This is for the group.
He's comfortable enough to tell him what's going on.
Yeah,
Moses is enough with Yitro.
yeah, and say more about like how does he describe what's going on? What does he tell him?
Well, it sounds like he's exploring that something pretty awesome, something pretty miraculous happened, and he may be looking for another perspective on
Mhm.
how it all came together.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
absolutely.
maybe proselytizing a little bit.
Possibly. He's trying to recruit him, saying, "Hey,
And I
look at
would,
this great
Well, would
God."
you would you would you tell the hardships if you're proselytizing, or maybe you would say this is what we were struggling with and God saved us from them, I guess.
I mean, he has a very compelling argument for proselytizing. I mean, I talked to God. God said he would do all these things. God did all these things, and it gave us very good outcome.
I've
It's
I've
not.
always I oh I'm so sorry, Allison.
Please,
Go,
please
go ahead.
go.
I was going to say I've always felt like Jethro was, in some ways, really acting like a traditional father-in-law, just looking out for the best interest of his daughter,
Hmm.
um, trying to help his son-in-law manage his time and his sanity, and
Yeah, so there's a relationship there. Jethro at minimum is like trying to, look out for his family. But I want to kind of zoom in on this thing that Ellen had pointed out, where it says that Moses recounted like all the cool stuff that God had done, all the things that helped the Israelites, and he talked about all the hardships along the way. And so when you're talking to someone, do you talk about the hardships or, is it always everything's fine, everything's good? Oh, my kids did this. Oh, I got this raise. So what does it mean that Moses was sharing the hardships?
If you're willing to show vulnerability, to me, it implies a lot of trust or a lot of feeling that the person you're talking to isn't going to start gossiping to others about that, but more kind of internalize it and realize you've been through a real struggle and maybe you're looking for a bit of empathy and a bit of understanding.
Yeah, yeah, this is an intimate conversation. I just kind of imagine that, okay, Yitro, park your camels, come on into my tent, we'll have some tea, we'll have some wine, and, let me tell you what's happened since I saw you when I left to go back to Egypt, which, by the way, Moses was terrified to do. And it was this crazy scheme to go take on Pharaoh, the god king of the most powerful country in the world. And, with the divine help, Moses prevailed. And here he is out in the desert with all the people. Now, for those of you who know a little bit more Torah, how often does Moses kind of open up to other people or have kind of a close relationship? Let me give you a
I
hint.
can't remember too many times when Moses opens up and tells somebody what he's thinking or feeling. He tells people what to do,
Mhm.
tells
I mean,
people how to do it.
I remember him
But I,
yelling at people.
yeah, he
That's
loses his
about it.
temper from time to time,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
And
not even his temper, but sometimes yeah, he just kind of
He's
he has
very
he has
expressive.
moments of vulnerability out of frustration.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of throwing
his
himself on the ground when he gets criticism or whatever, and they're getting angry. But this, I think, as far as I can recall, is a very unique relationship for Moses.
his
Okay.
relationship with the divine is probably the one that's talked about the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his conversations with Pharaoh, really, you know.
Yes. Yes.
well,
Pharaoh.
there he
Who,
can't open up. He can't be vulnerable to Pharaoh.
Yeah,
no.
That's the
I think
last thing
he
he can do.
I think he is to some extent though. I mean, he had a personal relationship with Pharaoh.
Well, when they lived in the palace together as boys, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think when he's trying to communicate to God, he really does um like he really does want Pharaoh to just let them go, and he doesn't want to see bad things come to the Egyptian people, I don't think.
I love that, Dan. Yeah. So, it's not Moses was without feeling for other people and didn't have relationships with other people, but what we're um, seeing here is part of a very small group of times where Moses can be vulnerable and perhaps even uniquely so in this case. So just one really quick thing that I noticed. So here in 18, to change a little bit, Jethro says, blessed be God, which is written as Baruch Adonai. And among the more pious today or traditionally observant, this you might have heard as Baruch Hashem. Blessed be the name, blessed be the divine. So this, idea, this saying, which is still very modern and very present in some parts of the Jewish world, really comes right out of the Torah. This idea that, when something good happens or when you're, God willing, such and such will happen, or how's the family? Baruch Hashem, they're all well, thank you, blessed be God. So I just thought that was interesting, that this is, this comes directly out of Torah.
I had a question, Rabbi, of
Yes.
at this point, Jethro is acknowledging, the God of Moses.
Hmm.
Is Jethro becoming Jewish at this point?
What do you think?
I mean, there wasn't a story of conversion yet until we get to Ruth, so I think it's possible.
It is. It is possible.
Well, it is a process, right? Not an on-off switch, so that makes sense.
And Jethro was always seeking, right? He was like always seeking, like he was a very spiritual man.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a priest of Midian. So he was a priest of other gods. So yeah, he's a seeker. Um, and we're going to start looking at some commentary where they started kind of exploring this idea about what was Jethro's spirituality. And then, as Diane read earlier, okay, it's blessed be God, and I know that the divine Yud He Vav He is greater than all gods. So by the result of their very schemes. So this is a little bit unclear what this is talking about. So let's dig into some of the commentary about this. So may we have another reader. Hi, Carolyn. Thanks for joining. Someone reads starting with Rashi.
Greater than all the gods, this tells us that he had a full knowledge of every idol in the world, that he had left no idol unworshipped by him. Mechilta.
Great, thank you. Let's read. And then
Isn't
Rashi.
that a bit of an assumption?
Say more.
Well, he had a knowledge of all the gods in all the world, maybe all the gods in that area of the world.
Maybe just the neighborhood.
Maybe just the neighborhood, because lots of different communities had different gods. So I think it's a bit of a jump to say that he knew all the gods and worshipped all of them. But it's
Yeah,
not.
I think that's a great point. The Mehilta was filled with what's called midrash, stories written by the rabbis of the first, second century of the Common Era, or maybe even the first century before the Common Era. But so they were trying to kind of extrapolate, and some people call it the Jewish fan fiction, but they were basically trying to kind of answer some of these questions. Well, and maybe the question was, well, how did he know, that this was the greatest God? Well, obviously, Jethro knew everything. But I agree with you, there's certainly nothing in the Torah to suggest this. It's, maybe he was just, in any event. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I just I guess I'm a little literal, because it makes me stop and say, wait, that's a little exaggerated here.
How
Yeah.
big was their world at that time? So it's not the world as we know it,
Well,
but what was
at
their
which
world as they do it?
That's a great question.
and
Hmm.
at which time? At the time of Jethro or at the time of Rashi? Both times were smaller than what we know now.
Yes.
Rashi clearly knew more of the world than someone who didn't have access to sailing ships and so on.
Great point. Yeah. It was a smaller world, you
I,
know.
I yeah, I think with Rashi, we're just like things bothered Rashi. And so like he's trying to make sense of the things in the Torah. He's that like really the questions that came up as he was reading them. And so he reads, like Rashi rarely tells his own opinion. He always like um quotes somebody else or another book that resonated with him to answer
Well, there
to
were the
answer
trade
his
routes, and
questions.
they were familiar with other cultures. I just I sometimes feel that midrash is the rabbis telling a story to help explain something the way they see it, rather than taking it as an I don't want to use that word, taking it as an overall. This is the be all and end all of it.
Yeah, I agree.
They
So,
just are presenting the best way they can explain it.
do we know, did Jethro like live in Egypt among the Egyptians, or where was he living?
He was living in Midian. He was living in Midian.
Okay,
Mhm.
because I was thinking if he was living in a place where there were like a lot of slaves and stuff, they places with slaves, they tended to come from all over the world. So you could have a pretty rich representation of different ethno-religions and
Yeah, it could, because
like
of all
that.
the trade routes and the fact that there was trade,
Yeah.
and so he could know a lot.
And it's probably worth noting that Rashi had a very scientific, analytical mind, and he may have tried to stand back in the past and go, of everything that could have been observed at that point, uh, here's what Yitro had seen, and when he interpreted that
Hmm.
this was the most amazing thing he had seen, that probably accounted for everything he could have seen at that point.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll also point out that the Mehilta was written in the late Roman Empire. So it was still, Jews were living under Roman rule. It was a pagan culture. They were not yet Christian. And so this may have been a not so subtle reminder to their Jewish population that, hey, here is this guy in the Torah who knew about all these gods, the Zeuses and the Jupiters and the Heras and whoever. And he, this wise non-Jewish person, came to realize that Yud Hey Vav Hey was the greatest of them all. So, because there was a concern and a danger that people would just stop worshiping, would start worshiping the idols. I mean, that was the big concern at that point. Idolatry was still very present in the world. Let's move on to this next one.
So just a question though, the Roman Empire became Christian at a certain point under Constantine, and so
Mhm.
was the Mehilta under before or after Constantine.
I think it's likely this was before Constantine. I don't know for sure. But even when Constantine converted, it didn't mean that the idol worship went away right away. You know,
And, and that was another threat to Judaism, of course.
yeah, yeah.
Constantine the Great lived from about 272 to 337. So he would have been shortly after the rabbis were writing that.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on a little bit. So can we have a someone to read this one? Because remember, we saw this by the result of their own schemes. And they don't kind of know like what were they talking about there? So from the Targum, and I'll explain what that is in a couple of minutes. But let's see what Rashi has to say here.
I can read. Understand this as the Targum does, for by that very thing with which the Egyptians thought to judge Israel, they were themselves judged, that they had thought to destroy them by water, and they were themselves destroyed by water.
So what does that mean? The Egyptians tried to destroy the Israelites by water. What is that referring to?
Drowning the babies in
Yeah.
the Nile.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
driving them into the Sea of Reeds.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so then uh, what is Rashi saying here? How is Rashi interpreting the Targum?
That,
So
yeah, it was a bit of karma.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Not only was this God powerful, it was like, you're gonna, oh, you try to use water against us? Well, fine. That's what I'm gonna use to destroy you ultimately.
A bit vindictive.
Could be. Could be. There's a little Michael Corleone about that, It's like,
Well, wasn't there another? I think there's another commentary that said the Pharaoh tried to drown the babies by water because he thought it would fool God.
I'm
Oh, I
not
Oh
haven't heard
familiar
that
with
yeah.
one.
that commentary, but I
Wow,
believe
I
it.
hadn't heard that one.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah,
If I remember correctly, it was something like he thought that there was, because of his connection with the Nile, if it was like below the level of the water, that somehow God couldn't see it.
Huh.
yeah. I don't remember who
It
it
was
was.
interesting.
I don't know. I'd have to go back to it. But yeah, but there was another commentary that he was trying to fool God, and then God was like also trying to prove that he can't be fooled.
Love it. Okay, so what is this Targum thing? Um, so first I want to ask people who have knowledge of Hebrew, and Dan, you may or may not know this. What do you notice about the Hebrew here? And I bolded all these alepphs at the ends of words.
So it looks more Aramaic, maybe.
Exactly. This is Aramaic.
Hmm.
Well done. The That's a deep cut. Um, so the Targum was a translation of the Torah into Aramaic. And why might they have translated into Aramaic?
Well, Aramaic was a
Because more people were speaking Aramaic than they were speaking Hebrew.
Yeah, nobody was speaking Hebrew at this point, and everyone was speaking Aramaic. So it was just like we translate the Torah into English, we translate it to French, into Spanish, into Portuguese, whatever, so that people can read it and understand it. And the Targum is again in this kind of early centuries of I think it was early centuries of the Common Era. Um, so So then what they do in Safaria is they translate from the Aramaic into English. So let's see and this is Targum Jonathan, it's Yonatan. There's actually a couple of different translations into Aramaic. This is the one where there's English available. And this says,
I can read it.
great.
Now I've known that the Lord is stronger than all gods, for by the very thing by which the Mizrahi wickedly would have punished Israel by drowning them in the sea, upon themselves came the punishment and being punished in the sea.
Great, thank you. Um, So here it spells it out and it tells us like, remember up here it says the meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain. But by looking at the Aramaic, this was translated pretty close to much closer to the time when the Torah was written. They probably knew what that Hebrew word meant. And so we can really understand what the meaning was and what it was talking about. And so I think that, sorry, I am up
Can
here,
I ask
right?
a question?
Yeah.
What does the word Mizrae mean in that context?
Hmm.
East.
East?
Like, yeah, it's the shoresh, the root would be east,
Okay, thank you.
the
That
east.
is one. Yeah, absolutely. But does anyone remember what's the Hebrew word for Egypt?
Mitzrayim.
Mitzrayim.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
narrow place.
Right. So I think it's talking about Egypt, basically. I
Hmm.
think it's like the Egyptians. Um,
Hmm.
so, because
Hmm.
Mitzrayim, I think this is just the Aramaic
Oh,
version of the Egyptians. So again, and he really spells it out. Like what's nice about the Jonathan translation is you get a little bit of interpretation as well. It's kind of like the way Chabad, when they do translations of the Torah, they'll include some interpretation in the way. Like every translation is an interpretation, and so this is, I think it's a very useful framework. Okay, we're going to skip his Kuni, but this is, it's it basically elaborates on this idea and maybe expounds on the kind of reward and punishment, which is certainly something he's a Middle Ages, or maybe he was later, but he's a Middle Ages or Renaissance rabbi. Um, so he's focusing on that. But um, let's go back to the narrative. And so we're skipping ahead, and Jethro is watching Moses spend all day kind of adjudicating different disputes. And there's a lot of people kind of waiting in line and standing around. And so from dawn to dusk every day, Moses is adjudicating, different disputes and questions in the group. And so let's have a reader. Anyone who we haven't heard from as much like to read this?
I go next. But when Moses' father-in-law saw how much he had to do for the people, he said, "What is this thing that you are doing to the people? Why do you act alone when all the people stand about you, turning and believing?"
Okay. And so then Jethro kind of goes on and on with examples about this. And he concludes here. And Neil, if you could read this as well.
But Moses' father-in-law said to him, "The thing you are doing is not right." And the father-in-law of Moshe said to him, "This thing that you are doing is not well ordered."
Right. So that is the Targum translation, is not well ordered. So the thing you're doing is not right. This is kind of a JPS translation. It's kind of the standard translation used on Safaria. So why do I have that bolded? The Hebrew is lo tov.
yeah, no good.
Yeah. Or even extrapolating a little bit, not holy.
But we also learned in the other um, Torah uh, learning on Thursday that only appears one other place in the Bible, which is, or in the Tanakh, where um, it is not good for man to live alone.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what's the difference between not good and not right?
There's a perception. One of our previous rabbis spent a lot of time talking about the word tov and involving being on the right path towards the divine as opposed to all the other chaos in the world. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering if it's coming into play here a little bit.
Yeah, love that.
My brain goes to the classical interpretation of right versus left, and how right is connected with good and left is connected with bad, evil,
Oh,
chaos.
right. Yeah, I think in some languages left is sinister, it's
Yes.
sinister. It's
Yeah.
Right.
Latin
um,
and Italian, for instance.
Or gauche in French.
right.
And now my brain is failing me. Do you know in the alphabet, right, where the dot goes with the S, you've got, I don't want to have to sing the whole alphabet song to
Shin and
get to it.
sin.
Yeah, but shin and sin. Sin has the dot on the left.
Ah, right. Um,
We had a rabbi way back that said the way to remember which is that something about it's good to be a righty, but it's no sin to be a lefty.
hmm.
Thanks,
That's how
Diana.
he.
I'm left-handed.
I think that was a
I
knot, but
am
I'm not
too.
sure.
I am too.
Yeah.
There's
But
a lot
the
of
way I learned
lefties
it
in my
was that
family.
with the shin and the sin is she's always right,
Mm.
and it's no sin to be a lefty.
Yeah, that's what it
So
was.
she is always right, and there's no sin. It's no sin to be a lefty.
Well,
Um,
if we have
and
time
I
at the
think
end,
that not right kind of has a different connotation to to our thinking than it's not good.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, not right, it has almost more of an ethical overtone. Like you're doing something wrong, you're really, and in a sense, it's not a good choice doing that, but I don't know that it's like, as opposed to like not good, that has all kinds of, implications about it's not good for your health, it's not good for the people. I wouldn't say it's not right for your health. It's not right. And my perception is colored a little bit by the fact that I'm a recovering workaholic. At one point, when I was in corporate, I was working 90 hours a week and I was constantly like doing all this stuff, but never getting to the important things. And so this is what this kind of brings up for me. And as Neil read, um, the Targum in the Aramaic, it's not about right or even good. It's not well ordered. So, what is that? That's a very interesting interpretation. What does that suggest to you?
Can I ask a question about the Hebrew in the previous verse, Rabbi? And maybe you know,
Certainly.
and maybe I'm wrong about this, but when he says Vayomer Hotain, wouldn't Hotain is not like just he said to like he's giving him advice. Like that's like
Hmm,
he's giving something to him.
right.
That's
Yeah,
not just he's not just speaking at him.
I love that.
So
Yeah, you're absolutely
you
right.
would you change that interpretation to but Moses' father-in-law advised him?
I don't know. I mean, tain is like to give something. It's not like it doesn't. Yeah, like he's giving him.
So in
Yeah,
English, we talk about, let me give you some fatherly advice, that kind of
Hmm.
expression makes
yes.
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I think it speaks to kind of, it fits well within this kind of picture of intimacy. And by the way, how many people did Moses take advice from? As we talked about before, not very many. I
Okay,
can't think of another one.
Short
I,
list.
I had brought it up at the verse in Sepharia and clicked on Hotane, and unfortunately, it looks like that has to do with father-in-law, son-in-law relationship rather than
Oh,
Oh, that's still related, though. To me,
yes.
that still fits. That when you're looking to an elder and the elder gives you something, that can have more import than just reading something in a magazine or hearing it from a friend.
can I ask Allison? What did it say the root word was? I'm just curious.
Um,
She's looking right now.
it has a root related. Uh, I think it's the same letters, but I'm not. I
So what
don't
does it
exactly.
say about that?
It
Okay.
says to
Sorry.
become a son-in-law to make oneself a daughter's husband, but I don't know exactly how to read the translation. What the root is.
So there's a very good argument that Hebrew, we talk about the three-letter roots, but probably Proto-Hebrew had two-letter roots.
Mhm.
And so the verb that Dan is talking about is nun, tough, nun, natan, which is to give. And sometimes a rabbi would say, it says chotain, but it really should be natan, and that's the hidden meaning is giving, and so you could definitely, especially the more mystical or Hasidic interpretations, would just make that change and say, yeah, that's actually, which is kind of an interesting tool. So I think I really like Dan bringing that in.
Good
And it
catch
could
there.
have just said, Jethro said to him, right? It emphasized this father-in-law relationship, which brings in, this again, intimate relationship between the two. So
Back to
let's,
your question about well ordered
yes.
versus not right. Um, I certainly see not well ordered as an organizational issue
Mhm.
rather than not right being as you indicated earlier, something that's has some moral implication.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I
And
think
I
of the
like,
Yiddish word from Famished, of you're just bouncing off the walls. You're lost in all the noise.
right,
Well,
right.
just a quick aside on NPR this morning when I turned it on, they were talking about how a word that describes how people are feeling in this time is overwhelmed, and a lot of
Mhm.
experts came up with the same word.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is a good segue to our next section. So it's not well ordered, and so you're going to wear yourself out, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. And then he describes, find some smart people and delegate to them, all of the stuff to free you up. He doesn't even say to free you up, so you can share the burden. But I want to kind of dig into this well-ordered idea. And so some of you, and I know some of you are part of the Musar community. Musar is a Jewish spiritual practice of focusing on character traits for personal development. And so I put a few quotes here from talking about order. I don't know if one of our Musarniks would like to read these.
I'll read it. All your actions and possessions should be orderly, each and every one in a set place and set time. Let your thoughts always be free to deal with that which lies ahead of you. Rabbi M.M. Leffin of Satanov.
Yeah.
Lack of order causes confusion, and one whose mundane matters are without structure and order will also be confused in their service of God. Rabbi Zondel of Salant. When a person frees their heart of all other thoughts that reside in it and seizes upon one thought, then they will undoubtedly be zealous in its execution. Orchat Sadikim.
Yes, which means the ways of the righteous. Okay, thank you, Ellen. Okay, so maybe to kind of get started, if we think about these maybe before we go to the question that I wrote, so what is your takeaway? What are some of the things you're noticing about these various sources talking about order and disorder?
Moses is lacking in the attention to his spiritual or ethical side in favor of 100% administrative duty.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Marty. And that reminded me of something which I hadn't thought of in this context, but I've just talked to a lot of rabbis over the years who say, oh my God, I get so caught up in just running the synagogue and doing things, for everybody else that I don't even have any time for my own spiritual journey. And um, I heard that long before I went to rabbinical school. And personally, I really try to remember that. So it's a good, we're human. And if we just get caught up in this stuff, we can lose out on our spiritual needs. Thank you, Marty. What else?
Well, in my own life, I often see myself getting into discussions, some cases disagreements or debates over minutia. And every now and then, a little voice in my head says, back up, try to remember what problem you're actually trying to solve before you start coming up with ideas and solutions. And that can reset things for me and show me with clarity what I may have been totally missing when I was so caught up in trying to defeat somebody else's argument or understand even what they were trying to disagree on.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Neil. This first and third one kind of talk about, you know, freeing the mind or the ability to kind of focus on one thing. What's your take on that? Is that relevant to this Torah portion and this little vignette that we've been exploring?
Well, there was a vision throughout the book of Exodus and throughout the Torah of moving people into building a nation and a promised land and getting through all the obstacles between where they are both physically and metaphysically and to where they need to be. And if all we're doing is figuring out, whose goat it belongs to use your example from last night, it's really hard to see one's way clear to defining that new existence, that new paradigm.
Yeah, thank you. And let's talk about that new paradigm. Was it just a different, oh, there's rich farmland over here, we're going to move? Is that the only journey that people on, or is there another layer or some other place they need to move to?
They need to move to caring more about just their family unit and to being a civilization, having ideals towards whether it's ethics and moral or society in general. And that's something that if you've been a bunch of slaves, you're just trying to survive till the next day, basically. And here we're trying to do a little bit of nation building and a little bit of idealizing.
Yeah, yeah. There's some nation building. There's getting some kind of common values. And for the Torah, what's the most important value? And it's kind of um, in this sort of second reading, it's touched on.
Service of God.
Yeah, yeah. You've been stuck in this midst these idol worshippers for 400 years, and you got to learn that, Yud Hey Vav Hey is the divine. We're here to be of service. And it's not a lesson that not everyone is a believer in God, which is the point still holds though, being in service to something bigger than ourselves. And that was a big change. just as a slave. It was just all about day-to-day survival of just how do we get through. And all of a sudden, we're in this journey where, yeah, it's going to be a better land and it can be our homeland, but we'll also maybe be able to do a little bit more than just survive, that we can think about, being service to something greater than ourselves.
A lot of the Jews really embraced idolatry, right, during their time in slavery as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it was kind of this journey from idolatry to, worship of this unseen deity that didn't have a statue, that, you had not, they certainly had not encountered before. Um, so then if Moses is, worrying about who owns the goat all day, what was the price he was paying?
Well, there was the loss of the ability to have personal time and focus on spiritual development, but then he was probably also missing out on making bigger decisions than who
Yeah.
owned the goat.
Right, right. Yeah. There's a there's a people to lead. There's also, we're coming up on, and we're not going to talk about it. I don't have any verses about that, but we're also coming up on the revelation at Mount Sinai that I talked a little bit about last night. There's coming to Mount Sinai, there is all this thunder, and then you get the Ten Commandments, and then, it's also here are the rules for our new society. This is how we are supposed to live. And um, when's Moses going to even think about those issues if all day? So I think as Jethro points out, you wear yourself out and these people as well. But it's just not good for anybody. The leader can't be micromanaging the small stuff when there's other people better suited to doing that.
And then how do you get any time with your wife and kids on top of it?
Right, right. So, okay, so then we get to okay, and then here is Jethro's solution. So, find some trustworthy, capable people. They're not going to be trustworthy ones who spurn ill-gotten gain. Set these over them as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens, and let them judge the people at all times. Have them bring every major dispute to you, but let them decide every minor dispute themselves. Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the burden with you. Okay. So this is um, so here's an interesting comment, which maybe we could just read the first part of this. So this is from Nachmanides, also known as the Ramban. He was like 14th century. Um, what is he sort of focusing on here? Maybe someone can read um, maybe down to kind of the cursor.
And thou shalt teach them the statutes and the laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk. That is, according to the law and the commandment with which you strongly admonish them. And you will teach the law and the commandment. Thus Jethro also conceded to Moses on this matter, of which he had said, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. In this too there was counsel on the part of Jethro, Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing it. That Moses should strongly admonish them and warn them of the commandments and divine punishments if in case of transgression, since he himself would not be involved in the execution of the law.
Okay. So this is, a much later rabbi. This is kind of, someone who was, writing 1400s, 1300s, maybe. Um, what is he's bringing in all this stuff about the law and the commandments, and Jethro is giving Moses advice on like all the laws and the commandments. So first of all, what is Rambam referring to when he's talking about laws and commandments? If you think of this kind of in a traditional Jewish context, or you think of like an Orthodox person, um,
It's living by the mitzvot, having a code of conduct, code of justice.
yeah. So all of a sudden, Ramban is retrojecting the Middle Ages mitzvot and codes of law into this conversation between Jethro and Moses, which is, I think, part of his current agenda of trying to get people on board with the mitzvot and the laws and commandments. And so he's kind of reading that into the story, but there's certainly nothing. I mean, we haven't even gotten the Ten Commandments yet.
That's what I was thinking. Like, is he saying that they're following the things they don't have yet?
Yeah.
Like formalized? Okay.
remember one rabbi saying there's really no before and after in the Torah.
Right. But for the purpose of Nachmanides, in this narrative, he's making it sound like it's a static chronology, but in reverse. So that's what's confusing me.
And is this a quote from somewhere else in the Torah or from the prayer book or something? It sounds familiar.
It says it's coming.
Yeah, I think it's a quote from later in the Torah. And what Allison brings up is one of the rabbi's favorite interpretive tools, saying, if someone tries to get logical and say, well, I haven't learned it yet, and I think you're just trying to propagate your own agenda into this story, it would say, no, no, the Torah is timeless and things happen out of order. And they all knew this stuff and they could draw upon it. And in fact, there's a whole principle that the Torah existed before the creation of the world, and the divine created the world based on the outline that was in the Torah. I mean, those are cool interpretations, but it isn't a law that we need to follow. Like it's an interpretive tool to say that the Torah is timeless and it can be out of order and that kind of stuff, but it is not. And different rabbis would disagree with me. Like for some rabbis, that is absolutely the way it is. For me, like that's an interpretive tool, but I personally don't feel bound by that tool.
I agree with you. I think sometimes that tool is really useful and it can create new and interesting pathways, but I think sometimes it doesn't make sense to say the person was wet when they weren't in the water yet.
Yeah.
So let me twist what he's saying just a little bit and see if this might help. So later on, he knew that we were going to have a set of laws and commandments, and you're right, they didn't exist yet. I think a point he may be trying to make is if you don't have a framework that's open to perceiving and accepting laws later on, it ain't going to happen. So you need to open up your mind enough to be able to accept some guidelines. And at this point in time, Moses wasn't ready for that yet, and the people weren't ready for that yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Neil. We're going to look at.
I just realized you didn't put in 1820 into your sheet. So this is a translation of 1820.
Yeah.
So this is a direct translation from this point in the story.
Okay. Good
It
point.
seems like there's an overarching theme of creating a sense of organization, whether it's through delegation or formalizing
Laws
something.
or formal laws.
Yeah.
In this parsha, the rabbi isn't Moses is alluded to, like God alludes to Moses that there will be commandments given.
You're right. I think I'm a little bit off track, and I'm just what I think might have happened was I thought I was getting this commentary for a different verse, and it just clicked, and then that kind of set me off on a little bit of a rabbit hole, which maybe wasn't on point for what was in the Torah. So thank you for pointing that out. My general point holds, but it's actually my agenda filtering the way that I'm interpreting this verse. So let's go to the end because we're almost out of time for today. So, chapter 19, the people arrive at Mount Sinai, and in chapter 20, we get the Ten Commandments. Okay, so here's what Rabbi Shefa Gold, who is a modern rabbi, is one of the real leaders in chanting, is a great teacher of Torah, and I think she teaches at Aleph. Um, so, what does Rabbi Shefa Gold have to say?
Yitro instructs Moses in the laws of empowerment, how to see and call forth the qualities of leadership in others, and how to share in the joy and burden of being human. If you sit alone with the burden of truth, it will weigh you down. And if you are serving people from morning till night, you cannot become a proper vessel for revelation.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. Okay, so what do we see here? What is Rabbi Gold's interpretation?
Balance.
Yeah, yeah, say more about balance.
Being well-rounded and not sticking with just one thing, and sitting alone with the burden of truth could lead to just kind of stewing in something instead of
Hmm.
doing something productive with it.
Yeah,
But also if you're just running around serving people morning till night, you're neglecting other things,
right.
including
And if
your
you
personal
neglect
development.
other things, what happens when you're just always running around and doing stuff? What would Moses have missed out on? What could we miss out on?
The whole rest of life.
The rest of life? Yes. Um, that is true, but I'm not sure that's the point she's making in this last sentence.
The rest of Judaism, the rest of the commandments, the rest of the relationship that we have with the divine through the Ten Commandments and beyond.
Absolutely. There is a bigger picture, but let's step out even bigger picture. Bigger, bigger. What does proper vessel for revelation mean?
You have to be open to possibilities. It's really tough to see possibilities when your head's down, mopping the floor, raking muck, or arguing with people.
Yeah, you're never going to get a new idea if all you're doing is running from place to place and judging the goats and, you know, what have you. And I think I'm going to stop the share here, kind of for a final minute or two. Um, we're never going to get like revelation. We can never be creative. And revelation, you can think of it in a theological way, but also just in a personal way, just being creative, having new ideas. Um, as someone who wrote a couple of books, I'm like, where did I get these ideas for the book? Like, where does my creativity come from? Is that just some genetic trick, or is it coming from something higher or whatever? There's a mystery involved where new ideas come from. AI does a great job of a lot of things, but it can never produce, at least not yet, any new ideas. It can repackage every idea that it has its hands on in pretty interesting ways, but it cannot create something new. And that's something that humans can do. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here today for our second Torah study. A little bigger, please invite your friends. If you are watching this video and you've made it this far, please give it a like so that the YouTube algorithms are happy and share this with other people. This is a free Torah study. It's open to everyone. We would love for you to join us. So please head over to rabbigregmarcus.com and join the email list. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.